Tracy, what you said was very interesting yesterday about the commercialization, but it's more than that of the Halloween sound thing. It's almost like a burlesquing where it's attached to everything except that this is actually has a deeper meaning. The Mexicans have the Day of the Dead, and that's still held, even though we have the masks and all that stuff and the parties, it's ultimately a spiritual event. Now, I totally agree with you, because when I was living in New York, Halloween, in like the East Village and stuff like that, it was basically a big kind of S&M, gay, you know, it was fun. It was a party kind of thing, but it was definitely more of a kind of a burlesque kind of wannabe, you know. People would say things like, and you get this from the one in Edinburgh as well, they would say things like, oh, they were more freely sexual and stuff like that, as if pagans and people in the past were nothing but a bunch of like, you know, perverts and stuff like that. Well, they were just obsessed with sex and nothing else. And that to me is a hippie thing, there's no truth to it.
But I think in terms of the homosexual aspect of it, Halloween always provided that space. It was a liminal space of celebration and a place where people could, kind of, men could be women, women could be men. You always had that costume aspect to it. So, you know, I think actually, I know the Pride marches did start in England, but the actual first gay organised marches started in America during Halloween. Yeah. So it did set that off. But in terms of what you said earlier about Halloween being kind of commandeered, I don't think it was accidental. I don't think it was just a commercial kind of enterprise, people making money. I think it was very, very known, the knowledge was very deep rooted of what the Irish have. So much so that the Christians, we changed every country in the world, in the sense, like you mentioned, South America. You know, all the South American countries today will be standing by graves and commemorating their dead. We're not doing that over here. Yeah. So not only did they commandeer Halloween, they diluted our own practices, you know, in terms of how we would celebrate this festival. We're the only country really, and England, that are not doing this. When
I was growing up as a kid here, it was a thing for bonfires.
Yeah.
And so like the estate where I lived, all the kids would gather up wood and light bonfires. I have to say, it was tremendously exciting. It was just amazing. And you could stay out late and wear masks and paint your face and stuff like that. But I never heard stories as a child about this was about the closing in of the other world and this world. And it wasn't until much later that I read about that.
Yeah.
And it was actually things like movies and stuff that showed that. This is one of the things with the megaliths and everything. If you read a lot of books from the 60s about like Stonehenge and everything, all they talk about is fertility cults.
Yeah.
Somehow it's all related to people getting it on at these sites. Very Age of Aquarius, very 60s,
it taps into
hippie.
The New Age thing from
and
back then.
That's where that came from. That's where that came from.
They don't like talking about the sacrifices as much, do they?
No, that was before that.
Yeah. But I think that aligns with the whole resurrection of, you know, the neo-paganism, the way they distorted that as well. They've done everything to kind of attack or dilute anything of worth there, you know.
There has to be a point though where, like, the endurance of Halloween has been unbelievably strong.
Yeah.
Like when you think about it, in Ireland, it survived the Christian takeover. It survived all the religious wars, all the things like the Normans, the Vikings, everything, and so on. And it endured up until at least, you know, the mid-1800s, where they brought it to America, and that's how it became incorporated in their culture. That suggests to me that originally it was probably an enormous thing. It was probably a central focus of these communities, as big as Christmas, maybe even bigger, because it was the end of the growing season and stuff like that, and the harvest and all that. And again, I was never told that. I never heard that. And then we have another factor as well: horror movies. Mm-hmm. I get sick of looking on social media and seeing, what horror film are you going to watch on Halloween night? And it's like, then gore. It's associated. And you said something that I thought was great yesterday, that the films are getting more and more gory.
But I don't think they can keep up with the appetite anymore. You know, this kind of thing I was talking about yesterday, benign masochism. You know, when you watch a horror film, you get a dopamine hit. And it's like the Nightmare on Elm Street series. You know, you'd be disappointed if it was less gory than the previous film. You know, your expectation is that it's going to be more frightening. Where else can they go with this? They've brought children into the mix now. We know, you know, that the horror films aren't like the old horror films, you know, where you'd have ghosts or things like that. It's got very, very psychological now.
Yeah, unless they're in the folk horror genre.
Yeah.
So you do still have that element there, you know, that came from originally from films like Night of the Demon, which were fantastic, and then that came through. But even like some of the American ones, like I like Halloween 3, the John Carpenter one, Season of the Witch, even though it's kind of like, again, it's kind of putting down Halloween as a time of mass sacrifice of humans, of children. It also, it's actually in that folk horror kind of, well, it was written by Nigel Neal, who wrote a lot of those kind of films, Quatermass and stuff like that. Them films have developed almost off as something else, but we still don't have a really good sound film.
I'm thinking of Hereditary. Do you remember that?
Hereditary, the one with...
who directed that? Was it the same director as Melancholia?
It was that the one with Gabriel Byrne?
Yes, and the
child's
head.
The demon Pazuzu, not Pazuzu, Paimon.
Paimon, that's right, yeah. But the child's head, that really does stick in my mind. You know, when the the decapitation, it was so real, wasn't it?
No, that was very disturbing. But that was a very disturbing film.
Yeah.
It was one of those films when you watched it, it kind of would stay in your head.
Yeah.
You know, he made a follow-up film, Midsummer, which is awful. Again, it's like one of these pagans are all into human sacrifice and all this weird stuff, you know. You were still living with the legacy of Julius Caesar's and Tacitus's writing on the ancient Celts, which are really Gauls. And talking about, we don't know if wicker men were real. We don't know if that was wartime propaganda or actual fact. But there's all within the art. Now you would think like that the Irish monks, the Christian monks, who we both are quite interested in, you would think they would write things really putting sound down. Yeah. But they didn't. No. So that says to me that it wasn't anything, that really was Roman propaganda with, you know, this whole thing, the sacrifices at the sort of like the equinoxes and so on. Yeah, but what year are you talking there? That would be the Middle Ages. So quite a long time after, you know, the official story about how Christianity has been here. Yeah. Like the kind of like the 900s to the 1300s. In some ways, Halloween that we venerate, celebrate, or enjoy now is really closer to the Christian dates. I say we don't know the exact date. Now, I used to celebrate it according to the lunar cycle around this time. But somebody said to me the other day, the quarter line, when the sun is aligned, the actual real date should be, I think, the 6th or 7th this year. Yeah. Which is funny because that's when there's a celebration at Ishnok. Yeah, but that's definitely true. The date isn't exactly right, but it's because all the psychic focus is put into the 31st. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It still grabs it at that point because we're putting a psychic focus into these things. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. It's like Christmas. We know that the birthday of Jesus is really the birthday of Mithra, the Persian god. And they just jumped it onto that with things like Saturnalia and Yule. But it doesn't matter. There's the power of that Christmas spirit. It's amplified in human consciousness. So the actual date on the calendar doesn't matter. Yeah. Once it's in the general area and the psychic and cultural focus is on it, it becomes that date. I mean, I've had arguments with people saying, oh, Halloween is really the wrong date. It's really a Christian festival. But I says, no, if you go by the intensity added to it, it is. Yeah. You know, you could be pedantic about it and say you could go back and correct it according to the earlier calendars, or if you be like me, be lazy about it and see it more as a festival that runs across the lunar cycle at that time. But that's what separates Samhain and Halloween, isn't it? Because Samhain would have been in accordance with when the light was going through. Yeah, and they would have used a 13-month lunar calendar. Yeah. You know, so even that was the the actual cycle of the calculation would have been very, very different.
Yeah, it's strange that the 13 comes into it as well, because that's often like Friday the 13th. I know there's a completely different kind of explanation.
No, but that, you're right.
But it tallies in with, the whole kind of Halloween theme.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The 13th lunar month is probably the calendar we should be using. It's in many ways, it's a more accurate calendar than the solar calendar.
Yeah.
But it was like because of, the Romans and religion, they went over to the 12-month thing. We're probably living in the wrong calendar when you think about it.
If you kind of refer to the world as Mother Nature, the 13 months would be in accordance with women's cycles as well.
Yeah.
So it would make, a massive difference if time was kind of judged in that way. It's kind of almost like the first attack on women, like the feminine, by doing, because it would have been known.
Because of the moon being tidal locked with the earth, it makes an incredibly accurate calendar.
Yeah.
So that was another reason they used it, because of the tidal locking. The moon also has psychological effects on people, which are very strange. Like, why does I had an aunt, she's long dead now, but she worked in a psychiatric hospital in Dublin. And she said, absolutely without a doubt, on the full moon, they would have to shut down the window coverings and everything, that people went bonkers. But there's no difference between a full moon and a crescent moon. They're not like it's a different size. It's just that the amount of light coming off it is a lot more. And so I find that very peculiar. Why is the amount of light that comes from the surface of the moon have this effect on people? It has an effect on me. I find myself kind of edgy and a bit.
Yeah, it's a common phrase, isn't it? Is it a full moon?
Yeah. Like, it definitely has. So it's not only was it a good, calendar in terms of, dates. It was also a good kind of psychic calendar. So if you knew the full moon was coming up, you could have made sort of like things that get people to behave themselves.
You plan weddings around it. But it's funny because as much as, when you think about it, as much as they grafted on to the ancient paganism and kind of reformatted things in a Christian way, they fractured it at the same time. It was almost like a fix and break, with the cutting out of the 13th month. I still think there's elements of Freemasonry. Use a 13-month lunar calendar. Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Like, this is going to sound controversial, but there's the Irish ballad from 1798, The Rising of the Moon. That's a very strange thing, and the boys will come together at the rising of the moon. We know that, Wolfe Tone, Thomas Emmett, Robert Emmett, they were all big-time Freemasons, and they were all tied up in the lodges. So was Daniel O'Connell. He was actually the head mason at the Grand Lodge in Dublin. Really? At the time of 1798. And that's a very, very strange song. Why was the rising of the moon so important at this date? You get this in a lot of these kinds of, like, I hate to say it, Masonic battles, where there's strange alignments and timings, as if they are, like the night before, like, I'm working on a documentary about a remarkable megalithic alignment across Ireland that's bulletproof. And I'm not even that big into the megalithic alignments, but this one is bulletproof and astonishing. And right along its course is Mellifont Abbey. It's bang on the middle of this alignment, and that's where King William spent the night before the Battle of the Boyne. He stayed in the ruins of an abbey. Now, of all the places he could have stayed, why there? We're given this version of the world where Halloween is this, Easter is that, the solar calendar is this, but there's it's almost like there's these underground, I know it sounds very conspiratorial, that somehow have continued on from the Sol Invictus cult of ancient Rome. And it's made its way through masonry and stuff. I'm putting these men down. Some of these were, Wolfe Tone, these people, these were remarkable men. As as are all the deists of that period, like the Thomas Paines and, they were during Thomas Jefferson. That was an amazing time in human history.
But that song to me, I've always wanted to understand what it was about, you know. And so there's the spooky part of the Halloween thing. There's the kind of kinky, burlesque part of it. But there still seems to be a kind of an esoteric element to it.
Oh, completely.
And you get hints of it, but it's like you have to be privy to it.
Yeah, but even like what we were saying yesterday, we were talking about the 31st being a significant death date. You know, Harry Houdini.
Why did Martin Luther choose the date to hammer the protest on the cathedral? October 31st, that of all dates.
Well, he was kind of calling upon the saints, wasn't he? Or, you know, so...
It's almost like they knew there was an energy force and they were tapping into it.
Yeah.
Now, this is all very controversial, like for Christians and stuff, particularly like Lutherans. But I don't take these things for granted.
No. And I think it's really interesting as well, when War of the Worlds was released in 1938, that they chose the 30th rather than the 31st. Because it was the 31st that the real horror came out. Like, you know, people's reactions, they were discussing things, discussing the reality of what they'd lived through. So, you know, I was talking about the two different types of fear. So on the 30th, they were captivated. You know, on the 31st, they had the trauma of it. And again, that the trauma is a liminal thing, isn't it? It's something that kind of is a vehicle for your experience.
They are obsessed with dates. I know we're going off topic here, but if you look at the schisms between the Orthodox Church, the Roman Church, and even the Lutheranism, the main schism between them was the dating of Easter.
Yeah.
The dating of Easter was a big deal. What was the exact date of Easter? We know it's Ostara, ultimately the goddess, the Germanic goddess of the spring, but that's where it comes from. But they, you know, this is why I don't understand these Christian churches. They claim that these things are pagan and heresy, but yet, if there was no importance to Easter, which is a pagan festival, Ostara, why are they so obsessed with it? Like, why are they so obsessed with these, like Walpurgis and Beltane, Saint Walpurga? Walpurgis is actually really a Christian festival that like neo-pagans co-opted. But it's almost like they say, oh, that stuff doesn't exist anymore, it doesn't matter. But yet they still maintain the days of the week. The only thing that they've really changed is the 12-month calendar, the solar calendar. And even Orthodox Jews still use the 13-month lunar calendar.
Yeah. It's one of the most important things in the Christian calendar. Yeah. And it's also probably one of the most important events.
It's Passover in the Jewish thing, yeah.
But for commercial, you know how we have Halloween, and I've said it, like, you know, it generates 12 billion a year. Easter's really important for commercialism as well. Yeah. And yet they move the dates. It makes a massive great difference when Easter is in terms of the tourism industry.
Yeah, so they're the same thing, sweets and chocolates and stuff, both of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Abundance. I know it's ultimately abundance, but the reason why people have eggs is because of fertility.
Yeah.
You know this kind of eggs and bunny rabbits. Yeah. It's fertility. It's the beginning of spring and the beginning of life. And then Samhain at the other end of the cycle is the shutting down of that particular segment of the year, and to prepare yourself for the dark. It's very Jungian, actually, when I think about it. Yeah. There was a kind of like a group psychology in the ancient people, and even in the Christian people, where different parts of the years represent the different aspects of the psyche. Yeah. Big time. Yeah, yeah. So it's like Jung says, at 12, the clock strikes 12 at midnight, and then you enter the lunar cycle of the dark part of it, the feminine part. It's always the male is the sun, the feminine is always the moon, the lunar cycle. And so Samhain is really to fall into that cycle, into that introspection. Yeah. But
you look at it on a practical level. They finished their work.
Yeah.
They've gathered their harvest. There's a little bit of a let up now. They can contemplate. They can think about people that have died that year.
They were also locked away, particularly in northern climates. You couldn't really go out much. Like in the Scandinavian countries, they would have spent most of the year inside those long houses You know, the whole community, those things were huge, like there'd be like 30, 40 people in them. And they were all living together. And that's where a lot of the stories would come from. The legends and the storytelling around the fire in the middle, and the hearth with the cooking pot, and the embers going up. That's part of the introspection of the darker months.
Can you see the parallel now, though? You said that the storytelling would take place by the fire. Look at superimpose this on Hollywood, and how they've kind of acknowledged that this is their opportunity to do exactly the same to us on a mass scale, you know, in terms of a civilization.
But that's one of the things that's missing from the Christian world, the lack of this kind of introspective thing. You look at paganism, you have things like the rites of Elusive in ancient Greece. You have the winter in the dark world of the Nordic worlds, and the whole descent into the underworld mythologies and stuff like that. They were encouraged to be introspective.
Yeah. You
know, the Greek mystery plays, when you watch those things, there's not a lot to them dialogue-wise, but they kind of blow your mind, because you're kind of like, the way the dialogue is, and the way that the lines are read, and you're sort of like, you kind of fill in the blanks in your own consciousness. You see, like, when you think about it, Christianity thing is a solar cult, really, and paganism is the lunar cult, and you know, the Son of God. And all that, I know that's like it's.
But even the top
silly,
of the high cross, so it's exactly that. That would have represented the sun.
Yeah.
Possibly navigation, but for me, it aligns with definitely the sun. And
one of the reasons Christianity merged so well into the Roman Empire was the later cult of the Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun.
Yeah.
You know, and the Son of God. It all ties in perfectly.
Even with Church of Ireland, I'm not sure if it's the same with Roman Catholics.
The halos,
and then the burial.
Yeah.
You know, facing east.
Yeah.
The rising sun. You know, so it's almost as though that pagan kind of aspect was transported into that Christian world. They've chosen to take what they want. You know,
because just like they use the old buildings and stuff. Yeah. When you get into the actual things of like the Latin Mass, it's astonishing how much it is close to things like the rites of Lucifer and stuff like that in ancient Rome, the Sol Invictus, and the Dismanibus cults. You know, it was almost the ancestral going to a kind of a different place.
Yeah,
like heaven. That was their version of heaven. And that was all new, and there is something kind of supernatural how the Roman Empire got itself ready for Christianity. It was almost like the old religion was decaying or going into cults like Sol Invictus, Dismanibus, and then when Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, it was almost like, okay, it wasn't a big deal. It's so funny that it shows you that these things do operate cycles of human consciousness.
Yeah.
So I think what I'm going to say now is that people should see Halloween and Samhain. It's not about chocolates, vampires, goth girls with whips.
Yeah.
And all that stuff is all fun, but it's the beginning of the collapse into the introspective part of the year.
But I think the Halloween that is commonly known now is collapsing.
Yeah.
And people, even the name of this event, you know, the Samhain sessions. I grew up in England, and I was too young to kind of remember anything of kind of note here before we left. And I wouldn't have known what Samhain was. It was only about 10 years ago.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. Maybe 50, God, we're 2000 and...
But we were living at a Misha era, because you look at the energy levels of the last Misha era, right?
Yeah.
Compared to this one was very deep. It was I felt like that yesterday was a very kind of intense, introspective day. Yeah. The first one was a kind of more fun. Mm-hmm. So that was solar. This one was lunar.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's how people should think about these things. There's psychological aspects to it as well, as we enter into a different part of the year. And that's maybe you should forget, no matter how you feel about it. And again, like All Saints' Day, you know, that's all introspective. You know, again, and that's a Christian thing. Yeah, so that's
And even
we were
kind of
living in real time yesterday.
All Souls Day, where it's assumed that you're praying for people in purgatory.
Yeah.
That kind of is quite scary in itself, because that the notion is that anybody that dies goes to purgatory until they excel enough or they do whatever they need to do in order to be able to go to heaven. So that's very dark. That's very introspective, because by praying for people in purgatory, you're consciously thinking of your own actions.
Yeah, but it's not fatalistic.
No, it's not fatalistic.
And I think a lot of that kind of purgatorial, if there's such a word, mentality, is the roots of why, like particularly in England, it's a famous time for ghost stories.
Yeah.
The whole concept of the ghost story at Christmas, that's a very kind of English, folky kind of thing. Yeah, and that's again, that'd be at that's the actual mid, that's Yule, that's Saturnalia, that's the darkest part of the year, in terms of, that's why that's associated with gift giving and stuff like that. It's like, we've made it this far, we're surviving.
Yeah. But it's amazing how, like, all part and parcel, this tiny island has had such an influence over the whole, nearly the entire world. Even Dracula, Sligo.
Yep, a lot of people don't know that Bram Stoker's
was
really
it 1832, the cholera epidemic,
yep.
and his mother's diary.
And the Slua, the fairies, like the blood fairy, yeah. Yeah, and that was all then sort of superimposed on Eastern Europe, the Carpathians and Transylvania.
Yeah.
But there's great wisdom in those stories too as well, and a great wisdom for these times. Like, I remember when the Rona thing was happening and they were bringing out the needlecraft.
Yeah.
I always remember that line in Dracula where Jonathan Harker comes to the door of his castle and Count Dracula goes, "Welcome, my friend. Come as a stranger and leave as a friend. Mm-hmm. Cross the threshold of your own free will." The devil opens the door, but if you cross the threshold, don't blame anyone but yourself.
Yeah.
Don't blame anyone. I would actually say, leaving this now aside, like ending this for me now, I would say that we actually lived Samhain yesterday, the Admisha era, because it was much more introspective.
Yeah.
It was a deeper dive into that sort of like psychic ocean than the one that happened during the solar part of the year a few months back.
Yeah. And I think the element of the conversations as well, the children. There was a big focus on children, and obviously Halloween is aligned with children for one day of the year having equal status to adults, being able to kind of present a trick or treat kind of scenario.
Yeah. In many ways, we took it back.
Yeah.
The stories in Misha era, they were dark, right?
Yeah.
What were they?
They were real life horror stories. And that's where we align kind of very much to the ancient Samhain yesterday. And that's why it did feel dark, because we were tapping into something. Yeah,
introspection, dark side, lunar side. Absolutely. That just shows it's a psychic thing.
Yeah. But back then, the stories they'd be telling would be ones of contemporary horror, people that have kind of been killed and injustices. And we're doing exactly that now. The fictionalization of Halloween has stopped.
Yeah, like, not to trivialize the stories that were told yesterday, but in many ways, these are the Grimm's fairy tales of the future.
Yeah.